Well, this isn't good. Oh, that makes it look like it. Is there a ringing with that? That doesn't sound great. How about that? There we go. Hey, and that doesn't have the ringing that I heard back there. Sorry about that, guys. For some reason, it apparently decided to default off of my microphone. So what I was saying is because I have zero intention of ever painting eyes on stream, I cheated a little bit and went ahead and got those done because for me at least, when I'm painting a miniature, I always paint the eyes first on a face if you're going to paint the eyes. Because it is far easier to go in and correct around the eyes right now rather than getting a face nice and highlighted and all of that. I'm glad the audio is working. Hopefully this is a good volume. Let me know if I need to turn up my gain or anything like that. But all in all, easier to go in, dot the eyes, clean up with a little bit of black, because I really do like having a black outline on my eyes. Let's see. Do I have a good example? So here's like Captain Marvel, where just went ahead, did the eyes, and that little black outline also helps sell it a little bit. But we're not here for her. We're here for the elf. And so outside of that, I'm not going to deal with any of the clouds or smoke effects for this. I just want to get Nightcrawler himself started to get painted up. And really, general rule of thumb when painting is paint from the lowest kind of colors and go up. So if you have something that's going to be easier to paint, like a jacket or something, is usually the last thing I'll paint. Any undershirts and stuff like that I'll take care of first. Nightcrawler, however, doesn't really have that issue. His tail and foot there have that kind of awkward spacing that it's going to be awkward regardless. So we kind of just get to pick a color. And I don't know. I've already started around the skin tones, so let's keep going with that. So what I'm going to be doing for his skin, because it's all nice and blue, is I'm going to start with Tooth and Coat's Elysium Blue. And then I'm just going to, for the highlights, instead of actually using a blue highlight color, is I'm just going to start mixing in some Caucasian flesh tone to help brighten it up and lighten it a little bit. It also gives it a little bit more of the warmth that you might expect out of a flesh tone compared to normal. So since we're base coating, we're going to go with a decent sized brush. And get to it. So has anybody been testing out any of the new X-Men themselves? Trying a little Professor X-led leadership or anything like that? Because I've now gotten 2 games in with the leadership, and it's actually it's quite a bit fun. This is, of course, coming from somebody who will speak of the love of Discount Steve and the power shenanigans and that. So it's kind of just a mutant variety of that leadership, but it's fun to get to put models like Nightcrawler on the table, and Magic, who is probably my favorite mutant, who just doesn't really ever get to see play anywhere else because she's super fragile. But something that I did last night, at least, that was a lot of fun, was being able to use Shuri and Professor X on different sides of the board. So you're basically just able to get a free reroll a turn, or spend that power elsewhere, because Shuri gives a reroll and then gives the power over to Professor X, and you just keep bouncing it around forever and ever, so that you just get kind of rerolls spread throughout the table. And it was rather fun seeing Magic and Nightcrawler get to pop off with that extra little bit of oomph. And also they work great because they both just get to kind of bamf around the table. Nightcrawler more so, but that is what it is. So I don't need to be too careful when doing these first coats, but because the feet specifically are going to be white, I do want to be just a little bit careful, make sure not to just completely douse the rest of Nightcrawler while getting that first skin tone down. His pants, however, don't really care about, because those are going to be a very dark blue-gray, which will very easily cover up this lighter blue that we're putting down. Alright, and all in all, I think that's going to be a pretty nice blue. for his kind of light blue skin tone. And here all I'm worried about is making sure we avoid those eyes. That we work so hard on. Let's see. Does Nightcrawler have a white collar around his neck? Is that a thing in most of his comics? Or does it just go straight to the black to blue? Go get my cheat sheet. Looks like there's not a white collar here, which, if anything, makes my job a little bit easier, so I will not complain. I don't think that the neck goes too deep with the blue. But again, we don't care if we splash onto his hair or anywhere else on him other than the eyes at this point, because everything else is going to be very easy to cover up with that darker tone. At this point, I'm going to swap over to a smaller brush, get in on those details. Which X-Men are you most excited to get on the table, Otis? Of the new ones, specifically, I guess. Is it... you're going Professor X, like just the whole leadership kind of helps redefine the X-Men team, or is there a fan favorite that you have among the ones coming out? Because this is a really good wave. You got like some classics like Iceman. You got Kitty Pryde, who is a big hit on multiple different levels. Shadow King, I don't feel like is anybody's like #1, but will still be a very cool addition. All right, that's what's up, Gareth. So I guess where are you gonna put Shadow King? Where are you gonna maximize his shenanigans of just bullying people around the table? Yeah, Nightcrawler, Iceman, very fun. Uh, I really want to try Iceman with Web Warriors because the amount of control and stuff they can get off of the slow with Amazing Spider-Man's leadership should be really fun. And of course, like, it's thematic. It's Iceman. Just need Firestar, and you've got the full classic team of Spidey friends. I mean, if Moon Knight's a Web Warrior, why can't Iceman be? Alright, so make sure we get his pointy elf ears nice and blue. And call that done for the face. Make sure we didn't miss anywhere on the tail, and we'll just move on to the next color. Let's see. let's go ahead and knock out what will be the black of his suit that I'm going to give some slight blue highlights. Mystique Brotherhood for Shadow King. I kind of dig that. Gives him some efficiency, lets him bounce around the board a little bit, but also it's a low threat leader, which works out really well since he himself is 5 threat and not like super expensive, but he's on the more expensive end of things. That'll be a lot of fun though. Yeah, I think of the sculpts this set, like, I'm a Nightcrawler stan through and through, but Shadow King's model very well may be the best of this wave. Kitty Pryde's cool, coming through the Sentinel arm. Iceman's is also really good though, so I don't know, full of good sculpts this time around. All right, so going in with the black, and it's really probably not going to stand out as a gigantic difference right off the rip here. Let's see if I can. But we're just beginning to give it more of a gray than black approach, basically. Actually, let's go ahead and move back up brush sizes. Yeah, Shadow King is definitely not going to be one of those models that you put on the table and you're like, ha, I've mastered this guy. I know exactly how to do all of his different things. He is going to be one that has some really cool stuff going on, but kind of like because of that, also has a whole lot of stuff going on that will make him a little bit more rewarding to play in the long run, but you definitely will need to take some time and master those mechanics. So you can kind of see the difference between the gray and the black there. And this is again just a very cool gray that after a nice wash will dull it back down, but still give us the nice darker parts in the recesses while still coming off as black, and we can kind of highlight back up to a cool gray. It has a little bit of a shine to it to kind of give a almost leathery-esque effect. Yeah, looks like his collar ends right there. And again, the red we're using for his V jacket thing here is not going to really care too much one way or the other. So always be messy with your base coat, because it's the only time you can really be messy with no regrets. I think the Astroplane Team Tactic card will be really cool. I think it cost him like a power to use it. But it's not one that I think you're supposed to play round one. Like, sure, you can maybe get a little bit of chip damage with it, but because it doesn't have any range restrictions or any of that kind of nonsense, being able to just place it anywhere on the board later in the game when maybe a character is limping and they only have 1 health point, or maybe they need to flip a button, but they only have, again, like 1 health point to do it. It's kind of like, oh, well, you can get this point, but you're going to daze your character in the process. And any card that makes your opponent have more hard choices to make, I think is a big win. Because at the end of the day, the more hard choices they have to make, the more likely they are to make the wrong choice. And sometimes there just are no right choices. So like, if, I don't know, Miles Morales has 1 point of health left, and he needs to flip a point, but he's also holding an extract, like, what do? Do you just let Miles run away, or does Miles go and cap the secure point at the risk of, well, at the not the risk, but of him just getting the guaranteed days off. So it's going to create some interesting decisions for your opponents and games, things like that. Cards like Mind Game that came with the new MODOK are just a lot of fun and are absolutely, I think, viable and playable. There's some shenanigans cards out there that are just very cute, but not necessarily something you're going to bring into a standard game, like Craven's Hunting card with Spider-Man. I forget the name of it. Fearful Symmetry. I don't forget the name of it. Because that card is just one of those things where it's like, man, if you pull it off, it is a legendary act. Because it's very specific in what you're able to do. And then you get a very specific Peter Parker back. So even though you can daze any Peter Parker, you only get to become normal Spider-Man Peter Parker in return. So stuff like that, very fun in casual play and what you're trying to get out of it. But I think Astral Plane is going to be able to be very viable just kind of right off the rip, both for shenanigans, but also just late game denial. I think its best bang for buck though is going to be the ones that you have to interact with, because somebody has to move onto it, and then interact with it. So it kind of forces them to take 2 damage if they want to get it, which is even ruder now that I think about it. Alright. So we're getting there with a cool gray. This would be a lot easier if I had Zenithal highlighted Nightcrawler from the get-go. Unfortunately, I got a new airbrush, not the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is this new airbrush needs an adapter to be used. So this is just a good old-fashioned rattle can prime on Nightcrawler, and I don't really trust any rattle cans that I have right now for the Zenith highlight. So we're just taking the time, going around. To get good full coverage. And because these paints do really well when they're a little bit thinner, and because this is going directly over black, it will definitely take a couple of coats to get that full coverage we want before we look at adding the wash. I also won't lie, it's kind of weird painting with a giant camera just right in front of your arms. Limits the mobility just a little bit. But I'm not gonna lie, this kind of gray tone going with him is also making me consider, like, hey, what if we just did the X-Force kind of gray, black, and red kind of tones? Could also be fun. Especially because X-Force are fire right now. The updates to Deadpool and Cable doing great work for them. And then, of course, they get the addition of Bishop, which is great, giving them a little bit of control options with his size 4 character throw. So he's not tossing Sentinel around, but, you know, he can just kind of do the other thing to Sentinels and just kill them. And then down here, we'll put a little bit of paint, but I don't think we need the full 2 layers, because if it's just pitch dark black down in the shadows there, 1, nobody's really ever going to see it. 2, it's the shadow, so it's totally fine for it to just be the full pitch dark black. If we were going for a color other than black here, we would still want to get at least that darker base tone to really be in there and stuff, but because this is going to be a black anyway, it's going to be fine. Alright, let's hit those arms one more time, and we will swap over. Probably just go ahead and go hit the whites. That way we can be sloppy with them, and then we'll just have to be a little bit extra neat when it gets to the reds. Alright. There, just a little bit more. X-Men are currently not one of my timeline rosters, but when I initially made my timeline rosters of, let's see, it was Brotherhood, Avengers, and Web Warriors, we hadn't seen all of the cool new toys that the X-Men got with this current wave. And honestly, because the only X-Men that I am using outside of, well, I guess in my other rosters at the moment is, oh, we forgot his chin. We'll have to go back and look at that. Is X-23 in the Avengers roster, and she doesn't really even have a lot of synergy with Xavier, because the only superpower she pays for is one that it's reactive on her dazing a character, which admittedly likely to happen, but doesn't have that synergy of trying to use a power every single turn or reactively, defensively kind of stuff. What up, Luxruck? I am using Elysium Blue from Tooth and Coats for Nightcrawler's skin. And then once we get to highlight stuff, oh, awesome. I'm sorry you can't make it this year, but, well, I will be judging the timeline. I don't know. It's going to be fun. I'm really excited to see what people end up coming up with. But for the skin tone, I'm going to just be highlighting it up with a light Caucasian to give it the skin tone a little bit of a warmth, even though we're going for a nice blue color. But I really think that when it comes to weird colored skin tones, that just adding in a little bit of a flesh tone is the best way to go about highlighting it, because otherwise it can be a little bit too similar to some of the other things. Let's see. Get under there real quick. And get that blue covered. But I think this is a nice mid-range blue. I don't want to start super, super dark, because at the end of the day, Nightcrawler is a little bit more of a colorful character. He's not Red Skull with dark colors or anything like that, versus something like Nightcrawler, who in general is a little bit more of a happy, more colorful character. So let's go ahead and start with the whites. And really, when you start to paint whites, what you're really doing is painting gray, with slightly brighter gray on top of that, and so on and so on. So for the gray here, we're going to use Wizard Gray from Tooth and Coats. It's the first of the 3-color palette of their white formula. And I've got to say, for a painter who is not super crazy or experimental or anything like that, the triad systems that Tooth and Coats employ and Army Painter employ are absolutely wonderful for little old me, because I don't have to worry that much about going crazy with different palettes and, well, how much of X color do I need to mix with Y to really make sure that it's going to work out. So just being able to be like, okay, cool, I start with this color, then I highlight to this color, and then I highlight to this color, is just kind of wonderful. That also said, though, you're able to mix those two colors together, and you're able to get even more steps in between the colors, so that you can, depending on the quality of painting you're looking for, you can get a lot of nice smooth layers in between there. Or if you're like me, sometimes you just go for a little bit more of a rough tabletop thing, where you get the 3 colors on there and there are highlights and it's nice, but it's not that super smooth blend or anything crazy like that. So we're just working our way around the foot. Wanted to be a little bit careful not to hit the tail at all. But don't really mind if we hit the section of the boot that will be red, because we haven't painted the red yet. Blue for the win. Man, blue skin tones are weird. But good luck with the Mystique. Are you doing anything crazy like the changing forms paint jobs that people are taking on to, or are you doing the classic blue and white Mystique? Yeah, I'm looking over to my right, and I'm not going to show it because repositioning the camera and all that kind of stuff might be a little bit of a annoyance. But I've got a ton. Don't take it as a challenge. It wasn't meant to be a challenge, unless you want it to be a challenge, in which case, go for it. But where was I going? Oh, yeah, gray. I have a ton of gray over here beside me, and part of the problem is just, at the end of the day, painting is like going to the gym. You really just don't want to do it, or at least for me, I don't want to do it until I'm there, and then I'm like, oh, this is actually, like, good for me, and it's fun, and it's a good use of time, and I don't really mind it now that I'm doing it. But getting there in the first place is that real difficult step. So what I'm hoping to do is, even when it's not something fancy and new like Nightcrawler here, is just every Tuesday painting up my backlog, call it beating the backlog, as a way to kind of motivate myself. I'm glad the gym metaphor works for other people as well. Because as I was getting up the other day to go to the gym, I was just kind of like, man, this is not like I don't want to get up and get me dressed and then get my kid dressed because she can't just wear her pajamas to the gym daycare and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like once you're there, you're kind of like, okay, cool, I'm here. I could hit another machine. I can do the treadmill. And much like with painting, like, man, once I actually sit down and paint, I'll be up here for a good few hours. Just like, oh, I just need to do this one more touch up. And, oh, while I'm here, I can highlight this one color. And then all of a sudden, it's like midnight, my wife's asleep, and I'm like, oops, I stayed up too late. Yeah, model. I don't even know what you would call that. Model attention. The temptation to jump between projects is why I have a bunch of models to my right that are like, oh yeah, well I'm painting black, and so Red Skull had black, so let's go ahead and paint Crossbones black. So it's like, hey, there's Crossbones. We painted his black. And oh, we did some flesh tones on somebody else, so let's go ahead and get that flesh tone down on him. Good job. And that's the story of the somewhat painted Crossbones. All right. I will say though, at the end of the day, I'm very glad uh, that aside from a few grunt characters who I usually just do some like slap chop kind of method to get them painted up and done, that AMG, all of AMG's models, while very beautifully sculpted, like there's so much going for these things. They have cool poses. Tactical rocks aside, I know not everybody is a huge fan of the use of that. I don't mind it. Get some cool poses. Nightcrawler here has a tactical cloud, for example. But at the end of the day, it's because it's comic book characters. There aren't these tons of little details that you have to go in and pick out. It's just you get some primary colors going in there, and you're just kind of done. It's much more chilling. Mantic diorama. What are you doing Mantic wise? Is it for Kings of War or one of their other systems? Because I know they got some of their offshoot ones that are actually pretty cool too. Also, Mantic is just very awesome because you just kind of make scenic bases for your units at the end of the day anyway, since you don't pull them off character by character. You can just do some crazy cool stuff with the basing for your miniatures. Cola Wars. Pepsi enforcers fighting Coke enforcers in the ruins of a bottling factory. Oh man, where's the are like do the Dr Pepper get to be like the elite troops or something jumping in? Because that's kind of fantastic. I am way too much biased toward Dr Pepper as my go-to soda though, so don't worry about the 23 flavors of ammunition coming through your door with an elite squad of pepper warriors. we're just getting those hands fully nice and gray. Which again, when you've got a black undercoat, just take the time to get a very solid base coat, especially when you're working with white. And not that Nightcrawler's hands have too many details to kind of goop up, but thinning your paints is a good habit. So, Clyde, what are you distracting yourself from the Color Wars with? I know you mentioned Marvel something. You got the new Panther Killmonger, Wakanda Falls, or knocking out a little bit of the backlog yourself? Well, as somebody who has pretty much all the affiliations available to play, and maybe two of them fully painted, you are in good company, Gareth. There's nothing wrong with getting excited to build stuff so that it can get put on the table, and it just sometimes take a little bit to get that paint job on. I do think one thing that I need to be better about is setting my expectations uh, for model painting, because at the end of the day, you're painting to get your models on the table, and that's going to be fun and fine and stuff. And I just started painting the wrong gray section. Get that cleared up. And so it's okay to not have every model that you want to play with painted to your best standard. It is absolutely okay to just be like, hey, I want to just be able to make sure I can put this guy on the table and he looks good from that like 3 foot, 6 foot distance. And that is totally fine. I know that, like, my Howling Commandos, for example, are pretty much all contrast except for the metallics and flesh tones and stuff on them. Just because at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I don't want to spend a super large amount of time just to get them there. Let's see. Brian, what are the odds that the Adepticon judges get to sneak around and do an Easter egg hunt for Sunday and hide the eggs around the MCP tables? I mean, we can absolutely be the ones to instigate such a thing. Are we gonna like try to hide them in terrain and stuff? What's the like? Do we give out tickets? Ooh, I'm starting to love this idea, Brian. You were a terrible instigator for this. Clyde, shipment, MCP. Oh yeah, plenty of backlog of good X-Men, Criminal Syndicate, a little bit of everything. So Nightcrawler, the blue skin tone, is I've got the base of Elysium, and then I'm just going to mix in a little bit of elven skin, which is really just to say a bright Caucasian flesh tone, to bring it out a little bit more. So you know what? I'll skip doing the red after I get this base gray for the white blocked in, and I'll go ahead and kind of show how that looks. Because painting skin tones sometimes is a little bit weird when you get to other characters. And I don't have to be super careful on stream maybe about painting the red then, which, you know, benefit for everybody. You see, Brian, that's a great idea about not asking Mike about it, but the odds are Charles will be there. And while I don't mind crossing Mike, I dare not cross Mike while Charles is there. First ever Turnet. Awesome. Enjoy that, Gareth. The MCP community, just kind of as a whole across the board, is full of awesome people. So enjoy your event. Don't worry about painted. I've been to events with people who played with gray or primed characters, myself included. Get Charles in on it. You know, Charles would probably be deviant enough to get in with us. Well, Brian, if you're driving, I'll say that you have to bring the eggs, because I don't want to put those in my suitcase, but I'm down for it. Alright. Let's get to this. This is my super fancy wet palette, which is to say a piece of Tupperware with a wet paper towel and a piece of parchment paper. It gets the job done, though. So we're going to dampen our brush just a little bit. To get that flesh tone flowing nicely. Which will ultimately a little bit more blue for this stage. Give us a slightly paler blue for Nightcrawler. So if we come over to the skin tones now, and we'll just kind of go ahead and start hitting some of those high points. Let's see. At this point, we're just going to be pretty general with the highlight here. Won't worry about it too much when it's under the legs and wonky, because it's going to be slightly more shadowed back there. But as you can hopefully see, it's just giving it a little bit more of a paler highlight to the tail here. With also some nice sections of the more pure blue popping out. With the elf ears. At this point, because it's that first highlight that we're doing, we don't mind it being a little bit messier. We just want to leave some few touches of the initial blue as we go around and hit things like the cheekbones and nose with that more pale blue. And then for the next level, I'm also mixing in just a touch of ivory to keep it bright and to, I think, also help it kind of stay away from going too yellow. And then we'll just be a little bit sharper on where we're putting those. And if you want this to be a little bit more of a saturated blue that keeps its punchiness, you can just kind of go up the typical blue highlights. But for the flesh tones, I like doing something a little bit different. It is totally trying to focus for the wet palette a little bit. Hey, what up, Corey? Man, I look forward to getting more games in with you, too. I know it's a drive for you, though, so I don't want to guilt you hard or anything for it. But I'm absolutely ripping some X-Men for the immediate next few weeks. Because Nightcrawler is probably my second favorite X-Men after Magic. So him getting in here, Professor X having a leadership that I just really enjoy the build around of. Yeah. Kind of want to highlight those pointy ears because they are a pretty distinguishing feature for Nightcrawler. And as we go around, we just cover a little bit less area. Bring that face in just a little bit more. Yes, Corey, I did get these as an advance on from AMG before I guess the general public. They were kind enough to send it over and let me get them painted up and work on them a little bit, which is great. It gives me an excuse to finally start doing painting stuff like this, but and also just cool to get the hands on the characters and see what they're all about on the table too. All right. Push the highlight one more time as I mix a little bit more up. Riveting stuff, mixing paint palette. All right. Key with the tail is to make sure that dark side just has a little bit of darkness on the inside of it, so you can paint the line coming in to really give it some dimension there. And then on the face, this final highlight, I just want to hit the pointiest of points. Like the nose, a little bit of chin action, a touch on the cheekbones. And the ears. I think that ear I went a little bit too much highlight on. So I'm going to go back in with the original Elysian blue without any additional to kind of bring that inner ear back down and help give it that contrast that you want to give the elf his, that gives the elf his nickname. Going back in the additional base tone to darken that back up. Do it on the other side as well while we're here. So yeah, that's as far as I'll probably go with the skin tone, but that's how I use a flesh tone plus the initial base coat to give it a little bit more of a punch. I might go back in later and do something to help give the lips a little bit more definition, but aside from that, that's probably me done with the flesh tones. Maybe give him some black eyebrows, but he's not really known for that. Something I did think of that would be really cool for me not painting my first stream ever is getting kind of a if it's the opposite of Zenith highlight, something like that. But you kind of make his dark all shrouded with the darker colors and make his smoke effect a little bit more bright for a really cool highlight job where most of his face ends up just kind of in complete darkness, but you have the nice yellow glowing eyes. You'll have the chance for some really cool metallic stuff on the sword with how it sticks out. Really cool options. Also, I don't think I talked about it and nobody really brought it up. Nightcrawler totally has the option to do one sword, two swords, or no swords. And I ended up just going with the one sword because I really like this pose. The other sword kind of cuts across the front of the model, which, for me at least, especially when trying to paint on stream, would have just made the whole thing a little bit more difficult than I would have liked. So we went with this. Alright, so at this point, before I go in with the red, I want to make sure that I've got good coverage on the two gray colors that I'm happy with. And I think I am. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do a little bit of a black wash over all of the part of the suit that will end up ultimately being black. And for that, I don't know if you guys have done this, but for any of your liquidy paints, pop sockets are fantastic for washes and contrast paints and stuff like that, rather than trying to put it on a wet palette. Because it just sits in there and it's its own little paint pot, and when it comes time to cleaning, you just do what you do with a pop socket and pop it out. It's great. Alright. So we're just going to take this wash and put it all over the dark gray area. Darken it back down a little bit because the cool gray was, one, a little bit brighter than I was anticipating, but also will help give it some extra shadow. And as always with washes, don't let it pool. They're otherwise quite easy to work with, and there's a very good reason they are called magic in the bottle. Really, you don't want to leave some real nice and big glossy spots after the fact in the recesses, because then you have to just go in and paint all over everything, and it's just not makes your paint job harder to do, not easier, which is kind of the whole purpose of the wash. He does also have the BAMF option. I am absolutely adding that option on, but I'm painting it separately, mostly because I want to try to do a little bit of airbrush work on it. The BAMFs, because I looked it up because I don't know how they usually do BAMF, is usually mostly a white word with a hint of kind of like a pink or magenta going along the bottom of it with a nice gradient from that magenta to white. And I feel like that's going to be best achieved with doing an airbrush, and then I'm going to use a little bit of Higgins Black Magic, which is a drawing ink, but it's also what painters like Mike Cousins use when they're doing comic book style painting, where they use the black lining process to really give it some bold definition on the colors. So I'm going to go through on the BAMF after I do the airbrushing and kind of black line it to give it a really nice distinctive BAMF that'll also hopefully stand out from the model itself. Alright, let's see, hit any more places where the wash is pulling a little too much to my tastes, which thankfully isn't too many places. I used to be really bad about basically using the wash like a contrast paint, just pile it on and be like, alright, cool, on to the next thing. Alright, and with that, while it's finishing drying, we can go ahead and hit the red. I'm going to start with kind of a more medium red rather than the super dark, because there's not a ton of highlighting that needs to be done on this. There aren't some super sharp edges, so I am continuing to use Duncan Rhodes. I'm going to do Sanguine Scarlet, and then I'm going to mix it with some Demon Red, and then end up with a pure highlight of Demon Red for just a nice kind of 3-color, 3-coat paint job for the red. Thanks, Corey. Hopefully see you soon here at GameKeep. And speaking of, I probably only have about another 20 or so minutes, so we'll see if we can just finish getting all the base coats done on Nightcrawler, and we'll come back and carry on later on. Alright, that is a little bit watery for my red. I'm not sure if you guys are able to hear the paint mixer going on. If so, I apologize for the crazy vibration. There's the rattle you want. That's a better consistency. Sweet. Because thin paints are good and all, but I'm not trying to glaze on a base coat here. 2 thin coats is about all I can stand in the first place. And yeah, that red just really screams Nightcrawler. Loud kitty. She's actually not here anymore, and I totally just need to get like a separate webcam for my puppy, who's no longer a puppy, but we still call her puppy because that's what we do. But we've got a miniature Australian Shepherd who loves to just be wherever we are in the house. And so when I'm painting or playing a video game at the computer, she'll just usually end up on my feet. Yeah, so that's a very nice stark difference from the black, which is really just that blue-gray. But now that we have some other colors kind of to give it context, it's really starting to pop out as, or read at least, as a black instead of the blue-gray. And when we get to the tail, we just want to be careful to not hit it too much. Thankfully, with a wet palette, any highlighting or touch-ups we need to do are very easy because the paint's still there. Oh, and there's the sword red now. What about you guys? Anybody have pets? Of crazy levels of adorability or cuteness or fill in the blank? Because at the end of the day, all pets are cute. That's why we love them so. And now that the first layer is dried on the back, we'll just go in and give it that second layer to keep that punchy red color. Oh, Clive, didn't know you realize you were in Tennessee. But sorry to hear about your cat in lab. That's man, just something people don't seem to really understand is how heart wrenching losing a pet can be, and it is something that need to people just need to realize sometimes that it is absolutely fine to grieve for your pets and your animals. They are absolutely parts of your family if you want them to be. Two cats, two guinea pigs, two frogs, and a snake. Goodness gracious. I'm assuming that the snake does not get to play with the guinea pigs very often. What's up, Kenny? How are you doing, buddy? So we're just going to kind of splash some red on here because it's kind of hard to see the underside. And again, people won't really look there. For anybody who watched last Friday's video and wondered why on earth did this guy introduce himself as Mr. Guild, Kenny here is the entire reason. As he started a petition in the Gamer Guild Discord to make me say that at the beginning of a video, so I hope you're happy with yourself, Kenny. Alright. And so with that, Nightcrawler is really starting to pop. With the red, we're going to go ahead and get the second coat where it's needed. Let's see. A loner snake. That makes sense. I don't feel like snakes will typically play well with others outside of the reptile family. Man, Clyde, good for you for having that mentality and willpower to actually hold to the you gotta paint to buy more. I would like to be so diligent, but thus the premise of beat the backlog of going through and just sitting down and painting some minis. So I'll ask because I think I've seen a few people at least mention that they too were excited to get their hands on this wave. How many swords are you guys planning on giving Nightcrawler? 1, 0, or none? And if one, in his right hand or left hand? Because I think there's absolutely a cool justification for putting the sword out in front of him, kind of holding it across his chest as a very cool pose as well. Yes, this was a rattle can primer, because I got a new airbrush. My last one died, not so kind death. And, so usually I do airbrush for my, priming and stuff, but because it got to this point and I was like, oh, I'm planning on painting on Tuesday, and so I opened up my new airbrush only to find out that it needs an adapter to fit to the pump that I have. So, I just used a rattle can to get Nightcrawler primed up and ready to go. Otherwise, he would usually have a white zenith for somebody where I want brighter colors. Not to mention, he actually has white on the model, so would have been great to not have to worry about that, and also helps pick out some of those detail lines and stuff of, hey, where does the white end and the red need to begin? So yeah, this is hopefully more of a one-off problem, as I've got a box of converters coming tomorrow. Oh my goodness, yes, Juniper. That is the first time that I saw a Nightcrawler with swords, and was just a huge fan of that, because it was him and Azazel battling literally in the heavens on pirate ships. Just absolutely hilarious, but also awesome. Yeah, that makes sense, Andy. If like Nightcrawler is seen plenty of times without the swords, so going no sword, completely understandable. However, for those of us who are excited about the swords, I am also glad that AMG at least gave us the option to do swords. And really, when it comes to the X-Men, AMG have been really good about giving us the different options that I think we want out of our characters. So you have like Xavier has the Cerebro helmet if you want it. Cyclops has the 90s X-Men cartoon hair popping out, or you can go with the kind of like closed helmet look. Wolverine, you get mask versus no mask. So AMG have been killing it in the options department with these guys. Just kind of wish, like, we've got 3 Captain Americas now. Why don't we have the classic buckler shield kind of an option for Cap? Would be kind of cool to get. Especially on the World War II Cap, it makes sense there even. Alright, so we're being a little bit messy with the red here. We're going to have to go back in with the black to... Oh, even more so than I had realized, apparently. But we'll go back through with the cool gray and do that anyway. And honestly, might mix a little bit of black in there to kind of give it a nicer, darker feel in the first place. Let's see. Yeah, I think that was some of my favorite X-Men stories that I got to read, was kind of that time where they're refinding themselves. It's also when I had the Marvel Unlimited, so I just got to read through a ton of comics and hit up a bunch of different stories and stuff. I have theories as to why the X-Men are the ones who come with options and nobody really else does. And this is based off of content for another game, so I could also be completely off base. And that is X-Men and Avengers are kind of done under different licenses, kind of, from what I understand. Uh, because getting art for this other game has different rules, basically, depending on what set of characters they're doing it. And so maybe with X-Men there's a little bit more leniency with being able to steer away from the movie kind of personas, because we don't really have movie personas for the X-Men yet. So we're able to be like, hey, do you want Cyclops in his 90s hair, or do you want the normal one? And maybe as X-Men get introduced into the MCU and they want to kind of have a standardized look for the character, maybe we get less and less options. So that's just a theory. What's up, Mitch? I am using Elysium Blue from Two Thin Coats, and then I highlighted it by mixing in Caucasian skin tone, light skin, into the blue to give it a little bit of a desaturated but punchier tone is what I did for the skin tones here. Let's see. Yeah. Alright. Just do the 360 look, see if there's anywhere else that really needs the red. Probably a little bit under the bodysuit. Yeah, I'm really glad how Elysium Blue turned out here. It really popped off nicely to get him kind of that bright blue versus like a dark blue that, I don't know, like Red Skull, you can start really dark with and go up to a nice higher red, but I feel like Nightcrawler doesn't really need any like super dark blue areas, and you can just kind of start light and punch it up a little bit higher. It turned out quite well. Alright, and with that, I think we'll call the red done. We'll come in and clean up a little bit with the cool gray. And that'll be all the base coating done on Nightcrawler himself. Not so true for his little clouds and teleporty stuff. That is a great question. What am I planning for it, though? So the box art has it kind of with the main section here, that nice kind of pinkish purple magenta thing, and then highlights the clouds with that same color. What I'm thinking about doing conversely is probably doing a similar thing here, maybe leaving some darker lines in there because that's typically how it's seen in the comics. But then instead of having the pink kind of almost dry brushed or glazed over the tops of the clouds, is to start with the pink down in the edges and the corners, like the bamf is coming from within, and then kind of leave the outside of the clouds a darker color. But that might be something that we look at next week, because I'll probably finish up Nightcrawler himself off camera over the next week or so, and then we'll come back and kind of take a look at how to do the clouds and stuff. You also missed it, totally amping the actual Bamf word on there, but that's going to be done with a little bit of airbrushing and stuff, and I have no intention of attempting to airbrush on camera because I am amateurish enough with that as it is. Yeah, internal glow. That's a much easier way to put it in 2 words rather than try to explain everything I just did. Alright, I'm going to mix just a smidge of black this time into the Cold Corpse Blue, which is that lighter blue-gray that I've used for Nightcrawler's actual suit. And we're just going to go in and clean up some mistakes. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to happen. Yeah, I could absolutely see somebody going with like some airbrushed or even rattled canned cotton balls for the BAMP effect. And I'm sure somebody out there who knows how to do electronics and wiring and all that kind of stuff will take it a step further and put some like little pink or purple lights in that cotton ball cloud, and that's going to look really cool. However, that person is not me. For somebody else, though, if I just gave you an idea, please make sure you post that picture either in the Gamer Guild Discord or up on Facebook or something if you do that, because I want to see it. What up, Tatted Colossus? How are you today? Alright, so now that the red's actually there, I can kind of see where the line is supposed to be for his jumpsuit. As we turn them all upside down, we're just going to go in and clean that up as well, because we went very splotchy with the red down there. And of course, when cleaning up the red off of the black, we get a little bit of black on the red. So it's the internal vicious cycle that painting models sometimes ends up as. I am using it's a Logitech something. I don't know. For the filming. I know that it is a 4K camera of some sort from Logitech that I got on sale during Black Friday, and that's the end of that story. However, I will absolutely go and find out its details if you want me to, and I can message you on Discord or something, Andy. Alright, so we've got about 3 more minutes before I need to stop painting and go eat lunch myself. So we'll just go in and clean back up the red from where we hit it with a little bit of that black. And then, because we've definitely gotten some red and black on the tail over the course of painting, I'm going to go ahead and start by hitting it with the straight up Elysium blue. And then go back. Man, wet palettes are awesome, guys. If you don't have a wet palette, even if it's just my kind of janky equivalent to a wet palette, where it's a Tupperware with parchment paper and a damp paper towel, it is worthwhile for going back and cleaning up little mistake areas like this. A little bit of the highlight blue, cool blue. And just a smidge of ivory for that third highlight. Sweet. And that is some progress on Nightcrawler for the day. Thank you guys for coming out for the first painting stream. It's crazy to have as much interaction and people come out and just hang out while I'm painting anyway. So thank you guys for doing that. I will hopefully continue doing this as I force myself to beat the backlog, get through it all, and have fun. Oh man, Blacksite Studio fancy street trash. Do you know if it's like pre-painted street trash? Because that's something I could totally get behind. Is one less thing to do, because usually my bases are very basic, like gray base coat, wash, done kind of a thing. But if it's something that's pre-painted, I am all for it. Alrighty, guys. Thank you again for joining me for this. Andy, I'll hit you up with the link here in the next 30 minutes or so, and you guys have a good rest of the week.